Hey guys, it's Maymay and it's time for some more card making. This is actually Stamping Saturday. I'm going to show you how to take some of the products from our store and turn them into a project. Now, this card is going to be a little fussy because I decided to do some fussy cutting. I love paper piecing. Now, I'm not actually doing paper piecing here, but I'm kind of taking that concept and turning it into a floral arrangement on my card. So what I've done here is I've taken the stamp set called Sunflower Wishes, and I'm taking a paper pad. This is the Spring Dots and Stripes from the store, and I'm cutting different patterns of paper in colors that coordinate the size of the stamps that I want to use. So I want to basically cut patterned paper flowers, if that makes sense. That's what we'll be cutting. So I'm just going through this paper pad and cutting out little squares, little rectangles of shapes big enough for me to stamp the flowers or to stamp the leaves and to stamp the flower centers on that I'm going to use on my card. Now the only thing I'm really trying to do here is make sure that I'm cutting from the same corner of the paper pad, so I'm not ruining multiple sides of the paper as I go through. I'm just going from this corner of the paper pad and cutting little squares out. It seems kind of wasteful, but honestly I'm only cutting about 6 or 7 different squares out. It's not really that many, and I have plenty of paper left. Plus, I like to leave the paper in the pad, so when I come back to it later, it's all still there. I only end up using kind of that, I don't know, it's not really red, but kind of that watermelon color, that pink color, and the green, and then one little piece of yellow. You'll see how that all comes together soon. So these patterns are going to be what I use to make the flowers. So the flowers are going to look very, maybe like quilted or kind of a good mix of kind of texture and pattern. That's what it'll feel like. And I really like how the project turned out at the end. At this point, I wasn't really sure what it was going to turn out like. I just was playing and I thought I wanted to bring you guys along for this one. So I've gotten all my papers picked and notice they're like stripes, dots, and they're different colors and they're going to work just fine. And I'm taking my Fiskars block and I'm going to put the big leaf on that block. This is the larger leaf from the stamp set. Using some VersaFine Onyx Black, I'm going to stamp this onto the pattern paper. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to eventually cut these out, and so that leaf is going to be striped in green and white. And that's why I chose the green and white, because it was the leaf pattern. So I'm going to stamp this twice because I'm going to need a couple of those. And I'm going to go through those other little pieces that I've got and do the same thing with the different images from the stamp set. I'm going to get 2 of this size leaf, and then I'm going to work on the other greens and get some smaller leaves and also centers for the flowers with that yellow. This is my scrubby. Look how dirty it is. Ugh. This is the Brutus Monroe stamp scrubber. I love this thing because I can scrub my stamps off and peel them off the block and put them right back on the page, and they don't have ink on them anymore. So I just leave it to the side so I can use it as I keep working. These little guys are going to fit 2 on a page, but I actually kind of thought maybe I want to do a leaf in the dark green and then flip this page over and use the bigger white dots. This is literally me trying to decide if I want to do that. And in the end, I decided, no, I'm just going to stamp them on that same piece and get the same color leaves. I'll leave a good bit of footage in for you guys to see this because, like I said, I don't know exactly where this is going to go. I have an image in my head, but I don't know exactly where it's going to land. So you'll see me do some what we call ciphering a good bit in this one. So now to the flowers. I'm going to stamp these pretty little flowers, and I think that the pinks work so well together. I just think they're adorable. So I love the pink stripes and the dots, and I know that's really supposed to be red, but it really feels watermelon to me, so kind of a pinky red. So I'm stamping the large flower and the small flowers all together onto their coordinating pieces. I like when I can get in the craft room and just play and not really know where it's going to come out. I'm not looking at a photo to help me with this or anything. I just wanted to play. And I really loved paper piecing. I used to do this a lot more than I do now, where I would stamp the images onto pattern paper, cut them out, and then use them to assemble in different ways. I have 1 or 2 videos on my channel about paper piecing, so if you want to see more of that, just look on the channel, do a little search for paper piecing. This little image is the center of the sunflower, and I decided to do it on that yellow, which I'm really glad I did in the end. You'll see that it really pops. So now it's time to cut these guys out, and I know not everybody enjoys fussy cutting. You can use your scan and cut here if you have one. Even if you had a die set for this, it wouldn't cut exactly to the edge, and I want to cut exactly to the edge. And I want to tell you, I literally timed this, and it was 6 minutes and a half. It was like 6.6 minutes of footage to cut these out, so it doesn't take that long. So here they are, all cut out and ready to go. Now, the only other thing I decided to do was on these centers. I have this little crosshatch stamp in that same stamp set, and I think it really makes the flowers look very whimsical. So I just went back to those centers and decided to stamp that in. I could have stamped that before I cut them out, but I really forgot about it. And when I was looking at them, I'm like, oh, they're a little plain. I wanted to add something. So just this little crosshatch. Now, if you don't have a crosshatch stamp like this and you have some flowers you're using, just use a black pen and make these little marks on the inside. It's really cute to add that. So you can certainly do that too. I think these turned out precious. Okay, so this is an unusual thing for me. I decided to make a 6x6 square card. I rarely do that. I am mostly an A2 girl, but I decided to take a 12x12 piece of paper and cut it in half and make a 6x6 card because I wanted to use a bigger focal point because of these flowers. So this is super simple. I'll have to make my own envelope for this because I don't keep 6x6 envelopes in my stash, but that's no big deal. I actually don't think this one's getting an envelope. I think I'm going to hand deliver this one. Now I'm trying to decide on the background. Remember I told you I left some footage in so you could see actually what my process is? I take out the paper pad, I flip the pages around on top of that card to kind of decide which one I want, and this stripe and that yellow just really stuck out to me. So I cut that down to 5 1/4 by 5 1/4, so a little bit of that bright yellow card base will stick out. And I know, can you believe these bright colors? This is so not Maymay, but I was like, I'm stepping outside the box on this one, and I needed to feel like spring because it was cold in Alabama yesterday. So this is a stitched circle die from Brutus Monroe. I really love this circle die. It is so pretty. And I decided to do kind of a dry run of flowers. So you'll see here I'm kind of laying these guys around. And the interesting thing was when I first thought about doing this card, I'd planned to stack those flowers on top of each other and use foam between them. And then while playing, I decided, nope, they needed to be individual so you could see all the patterns. I end up moving them around on the final card, but this was just a way for me to see what was going to fit. I even did a dry run with my stamps to decide what sentiment I was going to use where in the center. So now I'm going to take a white piece of cardstock and that circle die, and I'm going to run it through my Cuttlebug and cut that out so I can have that for the center of the card. And I love how it looks when it's laying on that striped paper. Just wait till you get to see that. It's really cool. Now I run my dies through and back. You don't have to do that. That's just my habit. It just is something I've always done, so it just makes sure I get a nice crisp cut, and those stitches are in there really well. All right, so now it's time to stamp. This is the fun part. I love to stamp. So I've already picked out what's going where. I'm going to use my VersaFine Onyx Black ink and the sentiment that says Mama. I call my mother Mama. That's it. I'm Mama, unless I'm being sarcastic and then I say Mother. So I decided to use Mama on this card. I'm going to stamp that right close to the center. I'm not trying to be perfect with this one. The flowers are going to let us be a little more organic with this. So if it's not perfectly straight, it's not going to matter. So I'm just stamping down the word Mama. And then I'm going to go and take 2 more sentiments from, oh, I didn't tell you, this is the Beloved Mother stamp set. It's available in the store. So I'm going to take 2 more sentiments, and this one says, So Grateful for You. I think that's pretty across the top. And I decided to add even another sentiment to it because the little sentiments in the Beloved Mother stamp set can be used together, not with just the word mother. You can use them to almost make sentences, not really, but close. And so this one says, You're my hero. I love that. My mama is my hero. So just stamp that and get it ready to go. Now this little circle is ready to be mounted to the front of the card. I decided to mount this directly to the front of the card instead of popping it up. I am going to use some dimension in the flowers, but for this I decided to glue it directly to the front of that card. I just thought it worked better and it gave me a little more leeway for the flowers. Now, if you're delivering this by hand like I'm going to without putting it in an envelope, you certainly could pop everything up on this card. It wouldn't make a difference. Now, the flowers were really cute, but they were a little bit flat for me. So I decided to take them in my bone folder and just do this kind of, it's almost like a ribbon curling method where I'm just kind of bending the paper up a little bit, especially because I don't plan to put this in an envelope. I thought this would be perfect. So I did it to all the flowers. I did it to the leaves. I did not do it to the centers. I wanted the centers to stay nice and flat, but all the flowers and the leaves. And in the end, I actually end up gluing the leaves down a little bit because I kind of over curled those big ones. but it's no big deal. I'd rather glue them down and have them curled than not do it now while I'm doing them all. Now the fun part. I've waited a long time for this part, so here we go. It's time to glue things into place. I am going to do kind of a little, fitting and decide what flowers go where. The only thing I wanted to be sure of is notice that one flower and the background are the same paper. I just want to make sure I don't lay that one flower in the same direction so that it kind of drops into the background. So when I do that stripy flower, I want to make sure I turn it against that background stripe. Does that make sense? Like make sure the direction is different on those two stripes. Here's where I'm starting to use my foam squares. I just put a couple on the back of this little flower and pop this up. And it actually is going to live a little bit above the first flower because I glued it directly down. So this is where I'm playing with the dimension. And it's really pretty. In person, this card is so nice with all the dimension. Now notice I put the bigger flower at the top. So at the bottom, I want to alternate how I'm doing. I'm going to put the bigger flower at the bottom and then foam square the smaller one above it. And that's just kind of like the way you do this to make it look more eye-catching. It helps the eye to travel more. If I kind of mimic the top, it might feel a little boring, so I want it to feel more organic. So that's why I'm kind of mixing things up here. Put my foam squares on, and then this flower, even though I put it on dimension, I kind of tuck it behind the one that's flat. It just was a little fun thing to try, but look what happened. When I do that, I cover up the end of the word hero, and I didn't like it. So I decided to try it again and move it around where you could see the end of the word. Luckily, it peeled up with no problems. I still tuck it behind that flower. I think it works great, even though that flower is not on foam. For the leaves, I don't put them on any dimension. I just glue them straight down to the page and tuck them in. This is like doing flower arranging. You just kind of tuck things where you like them. I love how the green starts to really make everything pop. I just love this card. It turned out really fun, and it was nice to just be in the craft room and just play. Didn't really know where it was going to end up or how I was going to like it, and sometimes things end up not working, but this one worked for me. So I'm going to tuck that underneath there. Then we start with the little leaves. I really do love doing this paper piecing. Now, a lot of people don't enjoy fussy cutting, I know, and a lot of people have trouble with fussy cutting. I understand that. But, you could just stamp this same thing. You could, stamp around the circle and overlap your flowers. It'll be fine. You'll see that I do that on the inside of the card in just a minute, and I just kind of let them overlap, and I'm not really picky about it. In other words, I don't mask anything off, and it still works just as well because flowers are so organic, literally organic, and they just kind of grow any old way, so you can kind of play with your flower stamps like that. And now it's time to put those centers on, and I'm just going to tell you, the card is pretty as it is right now, but when I put the centers on the flowers, it really pops. I used a little foam square in the center of each one of these flowers and popped up the centers of those on each one. If you were going to do this and send this in the mail, you could cut out any of this dimension if you wanted to. Some of the flowers are actually twice the dimension because of the foam squares I use, so it might not work perfect in the mail, but to hand deliver it, it's going to be great. So peel those little foam backers off and get ready for the yellow centers. Just watch how this makes it pop. You think it's not going to match, but it just really pulls it all together to me. Maybe it's just me, but I love it. I hope my mama loves it, because I'm pretty sure this is going to be her Mother's Day card. I also hope she doesn't watch this video now that I think about it. So here's where some real fun happens. Maybe it's fun. I don't know. I decided to Wink of Stella these flowers, which is a perfect idea. That's a glitter brush pen, and they needed some shine and shimmer. So I reach over into my little cup holder and pull out my Wink of Stella, and I just open it and I start to color the center of that flower. And watch what I did. I picked up the red wink and not the clear wink. I was devastated. And I'm leaving this in real time because I want you to see what I do. I want you to see that this is not the end of the world. Although I thought, man, now I got to go pull everything out and restamp another piece of paper and all that good stuff. I ended up not. I peeled this guy off the foam square, which fortunately I did, and it did not tear. And I have this on, it's off the screen, you can't see it, but I've taken that same center and I flipped it upside down because this is double-sided paper and it's yellow on both sides. So I'm going to take that flower center and I'm going to stamp it again on the back side. So I am able to just flip it over and use it. And even though the pattern is different on the back side, in the end, you're not going to be able to tell. So I stamp it with the flower center and I pull out that crosshatch that I did before and go ahead and stamp it as well. So I'm pretty much just recreating without having to dig and find more yellow paper, and pull out the pad again and the inks and all that kind of stuff. I can just fix it just like this. So there we go. The only thing I need to do is trim up just a little bit because I didn't stamp it perfectly. So I'm going to trim right around the edge and then glue that down. I should have flipped it over and shown you the red dot on the other side, but that red dot is still on the other side of this little piece. Now, just to make sure it stays, since I had already stuck it before, I added a little bit of art glitter glue and stuck that little guy right back down. Look, fixed. Whew, no worries. We got that all taken care of. And to be honest, I was pretty happy because I was afraid that I was going to have to start over on that piece and have to cut it all out again. But it took just that length of time. That was real time in fixing that issue. And this time I made sure I read the bottom of my Wink of Stella brush. Now my plan was to just Wink of Stella the centers of these flowers. And you'll notice that I'm going to kind of pat that brush onto the surface. When I want to do a heavier glitter, I pat it instead of brush it. And I see that, and I typically get a better coverage of glitter. So then I thought, oh, that's really pretty in the centers. Maybe I'll add just a little bit to the leaves here and there. And I don't know if you're like me, but anytime I get out a Wink of Stella brush and I get started, I just can't stop. So before it was over with, I ended up painting every single piece that I had cut with the Wink of Stella. So the flowers end up being glittered, all of them, the leaves and everything. I go back and do every single surface. Just of the flowers and the leaves, not the card itself. So now we glue this down to the front of that bright yellow card base. I love the colors of this. It's not my colors. You guys know me. I typically don't do these bright fluorescent colors, but I thought I would step out of the box today. So glue that to the front. Now the inside of the card is very, very plain because remember it's just a yellow card base that we cut, and it's time to pretty it up. So I'll show you the inside. It's pretty on the outside, but when you open it, it's too plain. So let's do something from there. So I pull out a piece of white cardstock and I cut it down to 5 3/4 by 5 3/4 to fit on the inside of the card. And I go back to that beloved mother stamp set, and I use the stamps that say Happy Mother's Day for the inside of the card. I'm also going to use that same Sunflower Wishes stamp set, and I'm going to stamp some images around the edges of this card. So I bring over what I lovingly call my trash tool. That is some packaging from a 6x8 stamp set, and I left the plastic on it. And I use it as kind of my stamp mat, my ink catcher is what it is. And so I'm wanting to stamp these flowers on and off the edge of the page. So that little ink catcher is catching that excess ink and not making a mess on my work surface. So I just play around with the different sizes of the flowers in the stamp set. I use the leaves as well. And like I told you, I really am not picky. I'm just stamping them. And it's okay because they're flowers. They can land wherever they go. Then I'm going to clean that ink off of that little packaging. And I use that guy all the time. I love that. Now we're going to glue this into the inside of our card. And it is done. That is all there is to it. I enjoyed making this card. I enjoyed the process, and kind of not knowing where I was going was fun. You could totally color those flowers on the inside if you wanted to make this like another level. You could add maybe Copic markers, or you could do it with your colored pencils, or you could color it with your gel pens. You could have so much fun if you wanted to. I decided to not. I like the contrast of the black and white on the inside. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little process video with me today. It was fun to do. Didn't know where I was headed, but I really like where I ended up. And I hope my mom enjoys this card as well. Thanks so much for joining me today for Stampin' Saturday. And until next time, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.